Welcome back to Chris and Retro. Today's video, I've got a couple I'm going to do here in a row because there've been some high-profile events that have happened over the last week. We had a situation here last night, and I live in the greater Rochester, New York area, and I live in a city that's basically like a bedroom community to the city. It's a small city that has kind of the have and have-nots, but we have really low violence in terms of what you would consider in a large city. Rochester has a ton of problems, and a lot of things that happen every single day would probably be headlines here. And in fact, that's pretty much the case last night. Our community has a variety of things. Every now and then we'll have a shooting maybe once or twice a year. And I don't shrug that off as like anything, as like, oh, it's just a couple shootings. But the fact of the matter is that's for a city of our size, it's actually pretty remarkable. And typically those types of things, and we had one that an individual was running from police. I'm not sure what the circumstances was. He crashed into a house and got into a shootout with cops, had a death by cop thing. We had another situation with a person with mental health that brandished something that the law enforcement either appropriately or inappropriately opened fire and injured that person. We've had, in terms of the last probably decade here, I can only think of one that was truly like characterized by similar violence you see in other cities. We have a lot of concerts here in the summer, and there was a local venue that had either, I can't remember if it was a comedy show or hip hop show or something like that, but there was a street beef that was settled with violence. And that was, truly street situation that just happened to make itself here. It wasn't born here. It just culminated here. So, for us, typically crime around here is a lot of burglaries, domestic violence. We have DWIs like crazy. People get elected into office because of DWIs. Part of that is because I think we have between 14 and 17 bars within like 3 miles of each other here. So in the summer, this place is, a lot of concerts and it's a great community if you're looking for a good time. But the types of things we have are typically what you would expect in this type of community. A lot of drug use in one portion of the city in terms of the drugs that make prominence. The people that have a lot of extras, we say that it turns to snow here in the summer, if you know what I mean, because the people that have a lot of money come into town and party in the way they party. And, so we just have a lot of those types of things that go on. And we had one incident that involved my son. Actually, he's Army veteran. He had a circumstance where somebody that was high walked into his house. Now that's an incident, and this video is not about weapons of any kind specifically, but in that case, he was representative of what knowing how to use a defense system works. He had an individual one night with a brand new baby girl. He works long hours, happened to be home, literally just walk into his apartment in the living room, wandering around. And, we're not sure if the guy just didn't know where he was at, but he at first showed up on the front porch in the camera and then went around, I think around back, and went in. And my son met him at the bottom of the stairs with a deterrent. Now, nobody was hurt in that, but this person, even high, found out that that lead trumps high. And in that case, he wasn't in a situation where he had to use it, but he's trained to use it, didn't panic, and I think, in my estimation, handled it exactly how you should handle home defense, as we're allowed to in our Constitution. And so the person left with no injury, and there was no fist fight because he didn't have it, and there was no altercation, and nobody got hurt because he didn't have it. He was able to use this as a deterrent. Those are the types of things that happen in our community. I was kind of proud of him for how he handled himself, and I think that's the way it should be done. However, we have another side last night that comes out that is not laughable because of what happened, but it's mockable. And there's a few things I'm going to talk about. I don't have all the details of it. It's all starting to come out, but I'm going to share with you a clip of what it is that I'm discussing. So last night, Canandaigua, that's the chosen spot. It's Native American, but it means the chosen spot. Beautiful community. We got a lake. We're one of the Finger Lakes. There was a woman hurt after suspected fire into a crowd outside a bar. It was 36-year-old local. She was hit as a bystander. Now, there isn't much more coming out of that. It was about 11:45. They're saying this happened, and last night when my daughters had a hard time sleeping last night, and I was up a little later with them, and heard sirens blaring near my house, and apparently they had arrested the suspected vehicle, or pulled over the suspected vehicle right near where I was at. What is funny about our town is that we always know which agency is doing the work, because if it's The local Canandaigua police during the day, you can count on 5 or 6 cars pulling somebody over for jaywalking. If it's and if it's a Canandaigua law enforcement officer watching, I'm just telling you, that's your reputation. If it's in the evening, there's probably 2. And if it's a single siren, you either know it's an Ontario County deputy or it is a state trooper. And typically around here, if they catch them quickly, that's not a big long drawn out thing. Generally, you know it's a trooper. And I don't know for sure last night. My guess, based on what I heard and how quickly it all was done, it was likely a trooper. But that's an assumption. I have no evidence otherwise. But I will, I will find out who the arresting officer or who the officer was involved in any way I can, just out of curiosity to see if this little tongue-in-cheek comment plays out to be true. And if it does, you can't tell me I'm using stigma because it's actually factual. If it doesn't, then sorry guys, I use stigma. Anyway, I'm not trying to make light of the shooting, but I'm also not going to over dramatize it because I think it speaks to a bigger problem. So in this particular area where this whole thing went down, they call it Blood Alley. Now Blood Alley, for people here that have not really been exposed to an awful lot, is like Blood Alley, and it's like this brandish statement they have over this side street that has bars that you don't necessarily take your new girlfriend on a first date. They're just places people go and get hammered. Essentially, that's all it is. You don't spend a lot of money and you walk away probably not remembering a portion of the evening. And I've spent my fair share of time down there. In fact, the location that this happened, its prior owner inherited it from her father, and I know her very well, and she's actually an amazing human being and does very good things for the community, is not a gutter crawling drunk or anything like that. She's a really good person, and it was her father's location when he passed. He gave it to her, and she ended up by selling it to somebody else. She's amazing, and the people that own another location that's just around the corner, while it's another one of these bars that has a lot of problems, the owners are awesome people, and I think the world of them. And that place, actually, it's called Rocky's, and that place has been Rocky's Cafe, and that's been around here for a long, long time. It's a heritage location for Canandaigua. The point is that street has some stuff, and it's because it literally is a small one-way street. Now, Blood Alley got its name is because in that street are 2 buildings, and just down there's a little cove inside the building. It's like a little L-shaped little alley that has no other side to it. And it got this nickname Blood Alley because back in the day when people were just fist fighting each other, that's where they would go to not get caught. You get in a fight with somebody, get too drunk, you got your beer muscles on, you want to get in a fight, don't do it in the street because everybody's going to catch a charge. Just go down somewhere where nobody's going to see it, beat the crap out of each other. Whoever walks out won. And that Blood Alley sort of came from that. There may have been some other reason why the name was coined that, but as I grew up, and I mean, I'm over 50 years old, so I've got a lot of decades of experiences of what happens in there and some personal accounts from my own days in those streets. In that particular alley, drinking in those bars, I am aware of stuff based on my own personal experiences. So Blood Alley has a name just because of the amount of fist fighting that's gone on in there. Well, last night, evidently, based on word of mouth and our gossip page, which is I'm not going to call it out, but it's got a view. It's basically known for people that fuss. So when you're on there, a lot of times people that site's a gossip site. Basically, it's supposed to be something that's a community site where people can know what's going on in the community. But generally, it's people fussing about, hey, did you see this car? Or somebody put a stuffed animal on my fire hydrant. Why are the police not here? It's that kind of crazy nonsense where people just don't have anything else to do, so they sit at home and fuss on a Facebook page. So anyway, some of the accounts coming out of there, some of it's coming from people I know that know people were there. So as you can tell, as I got further away from the separation of it, other than just hearing the sirens at 12 o'clock at night with pullover, and talking to my son this morning, who had somebody that was there, that's where my perspective on it's coming from. But basically what happened is there was a fight that broke out in one of the locations, which is noted in this article. And in that fight, apparently it escalated and somebody had a firearm and opened fire randomly everywhere, got in the car and took off. Now, in that process, an innocent bystander was shot. She has non-life threatening injuries and just happened to get caught in the crossfire of somebody that decided to brandish this weapon. Now, a few things I note about that. One is obviously the person was either heavily intoxicated or had absolutely no skill with a firearm, because if you can open fire in a crowd and randomly hit somebody in a second group of people rather than the first primary target, this person probably got their training saying, okay, lesson number 1, hit the wall, and they missed. So that gives you the level of skill set of this person, at least at that moment in time. Which also leads to other videos that I've said about people that say that they want their weapon for the self-defense at home and they don't have the control. They don't train for it, but they're telling everybody that they're going to defend their home. This is the type of thing that happens when you get in an elevated situation and you really are not confident in using this, and people do end up by uh, making a mistake and get themselves in trouble and emptying their gun, and now they actually don't have a way to defend themselves, and now you got somebody on another elevation saying, look, I'm not going to die, and that's where you really get hurt. So all that stuff being said, this is generally, as I understand, what happened. As a result, I'm looking at my notes here, as a result, an individual was caught in the crossfire. I'm sharing it because for our community, it's breaking news. But at the same time, I'm sharing it for a couple notions that I want to express. I may have expressed through my communication with you over the years. But one is, why would somebody do this in this community? Why would that happen? Well, one, alcohol makes us all do stupid things. I've talked about this before. For me, in that location, I've been all three things. If I'm in a good mood walking in my drinking, I'm going to be cracking jokes with everybody in there, and everybody's my friend. If I walk in those locations and I'm feeling some sort of way and I find a girl there, I'm going to try to find a way to bring her home. If I walk in that location, I'm looking for a fight, I'm rolling in the parking lot with somebody. My way of fighting, generally, the way my attitude was in those situations, I probably wouldn't have waited to some alley or something like that. I mean, I'm just stupid enough to do dumb things and probably get myself hurt. So God looked over me and it worked out. But that location presents those types of things. I see this from another angle, and I think it really boils down to something really important here. For somebody to do that, get into an altercation, and then basically spray and pray and hit nothing but an innocent bystander that wasn't even involved in the altercation, as I understand it, tells me that person had a lot of fear. Got beer muscles, found a situation where they felt this fight was going to happen. They couldn't handle, so what did they do? They first thought they were tough with this weapon and somebody backed down. That didn't happen. So now shoot and run. That's fear, probably alcohol or other substances. In the end, it boils down to what happened. That quote unquote blood alley, the fist fight alley, turned into this over time. And I really think it is essentially this. We're picking fights through social media, through our words, through YouTube channels, through everything else, through text messages, through everything else that we don't ever have to face. We've become a society that picks fights with everybody with our words and has never account for when the fight actually is a fight. When you're actually saying, I feel this way for somebody else, and I'm going to accept the responsibility of getting hurt too, to win this physical altercation. Now, why does that even matter? Well, for me, it matters because we probably will fight a whole lot less if there is a situation where we know for sure that no matter what we present in tough nature, whether we have a firearm on us or if we have a crew with us or whatever else, if we know for sure that no matter what we're bringing to the table, that we are personally going to have to engage with somebody else physically in an altercation that's going to harm us, no matter what we do, a lot of this stuff is going to go away. This to me reeks of fear in a society that even in our fighting, we're cheating to continue this persona that we actually are not. Tough guys all over the place have firearms. Tough guys, and I say that loosely. The guys that have a crew that are willing to stand for them, I love that loyalty. I'm thankful for that loyalty even in my own life. However, me individually, if I'm going to pick a fight with somebody, afraid or not, I generally don't do that unless I'm willing to be one-on-one in that situation or one-on whatever, because if you're evaluating your willingness to be in an altercation, I'm not talking about physical fighting. I'm talking just about generally having an altercation with somebody. If you're not willing to have that be a one-on-one, face-to-face conversation or altercation, then don't engage in it in the first place, because you're not really standing for what you believe in anyway. These circumstances obviously are alcohol-driven, environment driven, and maybe gassed up by people around. It's funny because it's actually there's a few people around here that there's a couple apartments over there that will literally drink and sit up on top of a roof and wait till the end of the bar is closing while they're drinking, try to get other people to start fighting, because they'll start taunting them and making them feel like they're not going to do it. So these are the things that go on, because it's almost humorous how people behave, and it's even become a sport for others because we all know that that's how this goes down. Now, this is not just that location. I think this is generally a society across the board. We have this problem. We have this problem. We are willing to fight everybody so long as we do not have to face them in any way, shape, or form. And when we do have to face them, we face them with all kinds of, you know, adornment of support so that we can still run our mouth in that situation and not have to face the consequences. I'm a big fan that if you pick a fight, you have to fight a fight. My father always raised me to know that if you choose to fight, know there's always somebody out there. There will always be somebody tougher than you. And you have to know that going into this very next person, no matter how you size them up, might be that person. So if you're going to do it, if you're going to pick a fight, you better be willing to fight that fight, and whatever that means. And I think that's solid raising, because the truth is that knowing that causes me to pause at all about consequences and who I'm fighting with and what I'm causing problems with and who I'm popping off about. If I'm actually aggressively going after, if I'm aggressively in an altercation, I've already, because of my raising, have the constitution to say that this is going to go to that place that it needs to go to, wherever that is. If it's a conversation that we're going to have, and that conversation, I will face you with the conversation, even if I'm afraid, because I've chosen to be engaged in that altercation in the first place because it meant something to me for whatever reason it was. I don't think that we should get back to the place that everybody's fist fighting. I don't think we should be at a place where people are shooting each other. I don't think that should be even allowed. And saying that, I think that we should also be more conscious of the battles we pick. Are we just jumping on some bandwagon to say this is what we should be standing for? Or are we actually believing in this thing that we should fight for, and we'll go to any length for it? I don't know if it was raising or if it's my generation. I don't even know if it's my generation, because I know a lot of people in my generation that got a lot to say that don't really mean it. I was raised in an environment that had certain criteria for what tough was, and that was very damaging to me. So I also see the other side of it. There was a criteria for tough that everybody else was tough, and it made me feel like I wasn't. As they're beating on me, but they're all bigger than me and older than me and whipping the crap out of me, and that's making me feel like, well, I must not be as tough. So I'm going to show them. And what it did is it turned me into a person that has a lot of mental health issues, because I was going to show them that I was. And I made a lot of terrible decisions because of that, and ultimately even ended up fighting in a cage, really because of that. Because I wasn't going to be a person standing around as pajamas with a color on my belt. I was going to be one of the ones that went through all of that training, choosing. There is a art that I have that I'm more than qualified to touch for black belt, and was able to touch for black belt a couple different times and chose not to, because I didn't want to have the black belt. I wanted to have another color belt and be able to fight better than them. So that was a choice that I made based on this value system that had been ingrained into me, that saw the fraudulent nature of tough guys. And I wanted to be authentic in that way and show those tough guys what one really looked like. That does skew my view on this, and I'll tell you, there's a bias that comes into my opinion on this. When I see shootings like this, or I see any type of violence that is related to this reeks of fear to me in the shooter. It may not have been, but just in the characterization, not knowing the specifics exactly, and not knowing the people involved. Now, if I know the people involved, it may change my opinion. But I can say, based on my knowledge of the situation and based on others like it, it seems like fear to me, especially given the nature of how things went down. I always try to end these videos with something to do with it. This is one where it was just a story that just kind of, I said, and I felt I'd share it with the audience, because, this is a society mental health problem. How are we dealing with stuff? And I don't believe in peace and love and hugging and flowers for everybody. I don't. I never have, and I probably never will. I think that some things at this point in my life, I'm just probably not going to change, no matter how much I tried. But I do think that this is a circumstance that calls out the nature of choose your battles. If you're really going to have an altercation, be prepared for the ultimate on it. And I'm not suggesting that you should get good with a firearm so you don't hit innocent bystanders and you hit your intended target. What I'm suggesting is you shouldn't need one to fight for something that you believe in. And if you can't handle yourself and your alcohol, and it's going to lead to something like this, don't do it. I'm sitting before you without alcohol in my system, and I am a sober person living a sober life. And this 24 hours, I know for sure I won't be drinking, and tomorrow that's my plan as well, because I'm the person that would go into those alcohol induced environments and do all kinds of things that I'm really not proud of or care to do anymore. So there's a lot of decisions that go into things like this that happen. If you find yourself and you've got a history like mine, or you have a belief system like mine, let's get others to come alongside and say, hey, um, pick your fights wisely. you know, don't go on keyboards and blow people up. Don't go on social media sites and make these bold statements without actually backing up. I can't tell you how many times over the years I've had people threaten me on social media. And in one case, it was somebody that was very dear to me. And I had wronged this person in my drinking. I had made, it's one of the regrets I have in my life, is it's one of my closest friends as a child, based on our circumstances. He's somebody that I still care about, I still want well for. But I had done some things in my drinking that hurt that relationship. And he was one of these guys that was a tough guy. And he was willing to back up what he said with his life. And he was one that I don't think really ever really wanted to get into physical altercation with me, not because I was so tough, but he was hurt by me, and we both cared about each other very much. And he made some threats for me that I did face. And nothing really happened with that. For a lot of it, because he's got a lot of history, I don't think he was ever afraid of me by any means. But for whatever reason, it never turned into the physical altercation. In that case, I have a lot of respect for him, because I know for sure he would back up what he had to say. My point is that he was probably the only one over all this time that's ever threatened me in words, over through a third party social media source that actually was willing to back it up. Generally speaking, when we're out there running our mouths, we really aren't intending to take it too far, and we have the safety of a computer monitor and a camera and keyboards and things like that, knowing full well that the likelihood, unless we really seek it out, of an altercation is probably not going to happen. In fact, I've had a number of circumstances where people have made physical threats to me and seen me and waved. I don't know what to do with that, because you can say all you want to say to me. If it's not something that really has got me fired up, you're not going to have any problems with me. You can be as mad or hate me all you want. I've got plenty of people that hate me. It's just not my thing. I don't care. Well, that's not true. I do care, but it doesn't get me to a point that I really want to engage anywhere other than just being a smart mouth with them. So, and I'll do that to their face. I don't really need a keyboard to do it. So, I apologize if this is more about my own belief system, and if it's become across that I'm trying to portray myself in a certain way. I guess I'm just unpacking something that happened locally, and the circumstances around it. I may be a little smirky on this video because partly because my son is a bad influence on me, and we were talking about it this morning and making comments about the shooter. So, and lesson number 1, shoot the wall, and he missed the wall. And that unfortunately was from talking to my son. So I probably should have raised him better. Anyway, guys, thanks for tuning in. I hope to get back to some more inspirational videos for you and help you down a path of recovery and hope. But in this video, I shared some of my own sins and bias and some of the ways I look at these things. I guess the take home on this one is, if you're going to pick a fight with somebody, know what you're getting into, and be ready to deal with that situation, or don't do it in the first place. And I would think that a better society doesn't do it in the first place. And I think a lot of fights that do start because we have all these safety parameters around that allow us to emote in a way that's going to fight without actually having to do it. I think we would be less brave and more interested in finding ways to work together if we always had to face the music on that type of thing. So that's my opinion on it. And this is not a gun conversation. I'm not an advocate of people shooting anybody, candidly, unless you're in my home. That's about it. So, guys, thanks so much for tuning in. Check out the next video. The next video, I'm going to talk about a very troubling situation with New York State corrections officers, not New York City, but it's New York State corrections officers. There was a local Rochester inmate that was murdered. And I'm going to talk about that subject because I got a few angles on this thing that aren't currently being covered, and I'd love to share that with you. Please like, subscribe. Channel keeps growing. We're a little over 7,000 subscribers, which is great. We were about 300 and some a couple months ago. So keep subscribing, keep sharing, and I hope this video was enjoyable for you, if nothing more than entertainment value. Guys, between now and the next time we talk, I'm not going to Blood Alley and get any fights, so I'm going to stay out of trouble. I hope you do too.